Hello, welcome to another episode of Deck Musings. So we are up to a point in Standard where Urza's Legacy has just come in. So it's been added to the card pool. We're not at a time of year where anything would be rotated out yet. It's interesting to see as well, and I touched on this last week, during this period of Urza's Legacy coming in, there were two standards, if you like. Standard between when Urza's Legacy came in and before the bannings, and standard after the bannings but before 6th edition comes in. And you can see there was quite a lot of bannings here. March the 1st announcement banned the first 6 cards on this list, effective April the 1st. A March 11 emergency announcement retroactively added Memory Jar to the March 1st list, effective April 1st. So here's a list of decks that were around in the metagame at that point. But in today's episode, I'm going to specifically talk about a format that was played at a Pro Tour, because it has an interesting connection to last week, but also obviously factors in the addition of Urza's Legacy in a way in which we get to look at a few more Urza's Legacy cards, because of course this would have been a relatively small set, and often when you have small sets come into Standard, not necessarily a lot of cards from the small sets always make the Standard metagame. It really just depends, I suppose, on the strength of the cards. But what's nice is their impact tends to get forced in Block Constructed, which is why I like to cover Block Constructed in these episodes. And it's particularly useful format to cover when small sets are introduced, because it's sort of forcing the hand of chance somewhat. So at this point, a Block Constructed format for this Pro Tour on the 30th of April would have consisted of the first 2 sets of the Urza Saga block. So that's Urza Saga, Urza's Legacy. The finals were between Casey McCarroll and Sean Keller, and they were both playing nearly identical decks designed by Ben Rubin, Landy Ho, Terry Sang, who also made the top 8 with the deck as well. You can see there. So the concept of the deck was to quickly generate huge amounts of mana to play big spells, and you'll see through that in a moment when we look at the deck why there's a connection to my previous week's episode. So it also here as well, Rob Doherty and David Humphreys played nearly identical decks as well. So yeah, remember we're in this period, I think was being referred to as combo winter. So you often find when that happens, and we saw it again in the original, was it Mirrodin block, that can often happen where decks become very similar, because you get multiple decks with the same sort of combo pieces, or synergies if it's more of a synergistic relationship than purely just a combo. This is a list, and I'll include this in the description, of all of the decks that made the top 8. So this deck is referred to as Ponza. That can be a little bit confusing because I've seen the term Ponza used to refer to land destruction decks. There is a little bit of land destruction in here, but yeah, it's very much riffing off the Academy deck in terms of the ability to generate a lot of mana. So yeah, this is the winning deck. This was the other deck that was in the final, RU Academy. Yeah, you can see how easy it is to see that, but yeah, fairly similar. There's a few things slightly different here. We've got utility belt, 0 effect, something called Colossus.deck. Again, I don't know if these are deck names that have been applied retrospectively or what the decks were to referred to at the time. There's another utility belt deck. And where's the Phoenix? Now, the reason why I don't always go through all of these, but I don't know if you've noticed already. Okay. So, Tolarian Academy. Plus, interesting. Do I detect rather a lot of artifacts there, maybe? So this is going to be fun to look through. I'm really looking forward to this episode. So let's have a look. And it's interesting if you've watched the previous week's episode to see, in terms of the artifact package that is going to synergize with Tolarian Academy, you know, what ones have come in from the most recent set from Urza's Legacy. Of course, the nice thing with this, as I've said, is we're just going to see Urza's Saga and Urza's Legacy cards. So it's a bit easier to spot, you know, what has come in. And there'll be slightly more cards than, say, in a regular standard deck. So we've got 4 Voltaic Keys, 1 to cast, 1 tap it, untap target artifact. We've got 4 Grim Monoliths, so this is from the most recent set, 2 to cast. It doesn't untap during your untap phase. Tap, add 3 colourless mana to your mana pool. Play its ability as a mana source, and for 4 you can untap it. Temporal Aperture, so 2 to cast, 5, tap it, shuffle your library and reveal the top card. Until end of turn, as long as that card remains on top of your library, you may play the card as though it were in your hand without paying its casting cost. So interesting. So we've got alternate ways of getting stuff into play in the deck. Plus it's an artifact, so it's synergizing with Tolarian Academy. Ring of Gix, 3 to cast, has Echo, so during your next upkeep, after this permanent comes under your control, pay its casting cost or sacrifice it. 1, tap it, tap target artifact, creature or land, so it's got tap down on it. Worn Powerstone, 3 to cast, comes into play tapped, so something else that, you know, is affected in some way and restricted. Tap, add 2 colourless mana to your mana pool, play this ability as a mana source. Phyrexian Processor, 4 to cast, there's a single copy of that, so when it comes into play, pay any amount of life. 4 tap, put a minion counter into play. Treat this token as a black creature with power and toughness, each equal to the amount of life paid at the time Phyrexian Processor came into play. And then a single copy of Mishra's Helix, 5 to cast, X, tap X lands. So, as I mentioned, there is an element of sort of land interference, and I think there's even some land destruction in here as well, which we'll come on to in a moment. Try and find that. You'll also notice that in this deck, compared to the Academy deck we looked at previous, the costs on the artifacts are a lot higher. The mana costs were fairly low. So creature wise, there's only 3 creatures in the deck. 1 copy of Crater Hellion, 2 copy of Phyrexian Colossus. But if we're generating lots of mana as a result of interactions between our artifacts and Tolarian Academy, which we'll see in a moment, makes these easier to play. So Crater Hellion, 4 and 2 red, it's a beast. Well, why wouldn't it be? 6/6, it's got echo, so during your next upkeep, after this permanent comes under your control, pay its casting cost or sacrifice it. So echo is a thing in the block. When Crater Hellion comes into play, it deals 4 damage to each other creature. Rather handy in a deck where you're not playing a lot of creatures. Phyrexian Colossus, 7 to cast. It is an 8/8. Doesn't untap during your untap phase, so very similar to Grim Monolith in that respect. Pay 8 life, untap Phyrexian Colossus, so that's how you get it to untap. Phyrexian Colossus cannot be blocked by fewer than 3 creatures, but keep your eye open for cards that, you know, twitch or twiddle, as we've seen previously, that mess about with tapping and untapping of artifacts or any cards. 2 confiscates. So for 4 and 2 blue, you get to steal a permanent. So you enchant a permanent and you can steal it. So that's any permanent. Land, enchantments, artifacts, creatures. So we've got big stuff that can do a lot of damage that we can, get out probably more quickly because of the presence of the mana. We can get round some of the restrictions here, and we can also, because we're playing less creatures here, or we're playing less creatures, this isn't such a big effect. So it's interesting, the deck has lots of ways of getting round the fact that we've got cards effectively which would work against us. 1 stroke of genius. X2 and a blue. Target player draws X cards. But there is only 1 copy of that, so we obviously have to be careful how we use it. It's not like the Academy deck we saw previously where, we got several copies of that. So yeah, we're playing blue-red here, but also in the block we have these cycling lands as well. So it allows us to get rid of these if we don't need them and then draw a card. So you can see we've got 1 copy in each of the 2 colours, and then we have our 4 copies of Tolarian Academy, which are synergising with our artifacts to produce lots of blue mana. Sorcery wise, we've got Arc Lightning, so 3 copies of that. It deals 3 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players, so removal in red. We've got Tinker, so at the time you play Tinker, sacrifice an artifact, search your library for an artifact card and put that artifact into play, shuffle your library afterwards, and then Wildfire, 4 and 2 red. Each player sacrifices 4 lands, so yeah, again, bit of land shenanigans going on here, land destruction shenanigans. Sacrifices 4 lands, then Wildfire deals 4 damage to each creature. Here's our sideboard. So 2 Meltdowns, so destroy each artifact with total casting cost X or less. 2 Hibernations, return all green permanents to owner's hands. 4 Rack and Ruins, so destroy 2 target artifacts. 3 Weatherseed Faeries with flying protection from red. We have a Morphling, interesting utility card, with all these nice convenient activated abilities. Untap Morphling. Morphling gains flying until end of turn. Morphling cannot be the target spells or abilities until end of turn. Gets +1/-1 until end of turn, or gets -1/+1 until end of turn. And you can see with this you can invest as much mana as you like. Obviously you have to be a bit careful with this one that you don't end up blowing it up through activating it too many times, because the toughness goes down to 0 or below. Confiscate, another one that, so we've got 2 more copies of Confiscate. If you remember, it's up here, so another opportunity to steal stuff. And then 1 copy of Shivan Hellkite, fairly high casting cost here. It's a 5/5 with flying, 1 and a red. Shivan Hellkite deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So you can invest quite a bit of mana in that. The only downside is, of course, your Tolarian Academy is generating blue mana, so it's not going to help you with the red. But by going through this sideboard, you can probably spot the sort of threats or matchups it was trying to deal with within this particular, Urza Saga block constructed meta. So, firstly, we'll have a look at the land again. So, yep, the lovely land from Urza Saga. And here we'd have the red and the blue. So Crater Hellion, with this particular episode, I'm just really going through the order in which it extracted from the from Architect when I did the when I saved the deck after I put it together. Although, of course, if you know how Architect works, it's pretty easy to import deck listings. So that's what I did from here. I basically just imported the deck listing from here into Architect. So, what should we look for? So you can see it's cropped up in a dual deck, Commander 2013, Vintage Masters and Eternal Masters. Vintage Masters was an online only format. Let's open the tagger. So, drawback, which is echo, symmetrical, in that it deals 4 damage to each other creature, so it's every creature there apart from itself. So you can imagine you get this into play and you can keep it in play. You're swinging with a 6/6 when a lot of other people's creatures have been wiped out, depending on the matchup. Virtual Vanilla. Just going to have a look at the errated text there. Okay, let's look at this. So we do sweep a creature burn, but what we will do is only on type creature. Looks like we've definitely looked at this before. Okay, 76 cards. And our old friend is first. Okay. What's that? If Bifafreet flying. If Bifafreet is in play, any player can pay green to have if Bifafreet do 1 damage to each player and each flying creature in play. This ability does not tap the if Bifafreet and can be used as soon as it is successfully summoned. You can see we've got a few creatures with some form of sweeper effect before we get up to Crater Hellion. There's fire ants. I'll just do a try and do a slow scroll through this because these are sort of fascinating creatures. Let me just scroll back, so again with this each other creature. So a lot of these are doing it to, I suppose that one gets around, it's not to each creature without flying. Yep. And each other. Actually, the easy way is for me to go back and do a search again and just do other in the Oracle text. I remember this, wasn't this in a commander deck? Yeah, 2015. And of course, it's an elemental. As you know, I like elementals. When Cloud Thresher comes into play, it deals 2 damage to each other creature with flying and each player. What's this? March of the Machines, Arabrask. So I think what I will do is let's just look at that. So 2 things I'm interested in is, so each other creature without flying. Okay. So yeah, there are a few here that won't end up sweeping themselves or have the potential to sweep themselves. But definitely more of the other type. Those crypt rats. Now the other thing I was curious about is just generally, I keep calling it Hellion, I suppose it's Hellion, isn't it really? I was just curious as to if there's anything specific about Hellions, like you get with some creatures when they're named a certain thing, you know, in the name. Sometimes there's some consistency in their action. Well, I see consistency in the artwork in terms of how they look. But yeah, quite a bit of variety there in terms of what they do. Do they tend to be on the large side? Well, that one's although that puts, that's counters, isn't it? Okay, Phyrexian Colossus. So yeah, it was turned up in quite a few core sets. Is also in that dual deck, Phyrexia versus the Coalition, and the World Champ deck from 2000. Oh, it's super menace. Oh yeah, we've got to look at this. I've not heard the term super menace before. It's cool, yeah. Let's look at super menace. You can't get more menacing than menace. Okay. Oh, I see. So better than menace, yeah. So this cannot be blocked by fewer than 3 creatures. Oh, we'll look at menace in a moment. Except by 3 or more creatures, okay. So I've learnt something new. So there we go. Super menace. And just so you're clear, what is exactly menace? This creature can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. So for super menace is what, 3 or more. Arc lightning. So yeah, this is something we've seen before, you know, like a 3 damage sorcery spell. 2 and a red, so quite a high cost. But you get to sort of divvy it up. There's actually a tag specifically for Arc Lightning. What other tags have we got there? So burn any. Does creatures and or players actually. Flames of the Firebrand, similar to Precision Bolt. Better than Precision Bolt. And Aerial Volley. In green. So we'll look at Arc Lightning type spells, I think. So what have we got? Flame Shot, you have to discard a mountain. Prophecy, Scourge. And we've got one in Eventide. Hybrid Mana. 1 and a red for Ignite Discord. Although there's a condition here on the colour pie. White and all blue creatures. Stapled to Inferno Titan as an ETB or attacks. You get to Arc Lightning. Gang of Devils. So it's on a die trigger. Flames of the Firebrand. There's the Aerial Volley, which is the green one, but only targets flying creatures. Death Dismissal, which is a white one, but only target attacking or blocking creatures. It's 3 and a white instead of 2 and a red. And Roll, it's on that as the -2 ability. Confiscate. So we'll probably notice the tag in here is theft of a permanent. Okay. And in 33 cards that will thieve permanents. Permanent thievery. Now, of course, there's other cards that do this sort of thing, but this is interesting because it does a permanent. It's an enchantment that does a permanent. Whereas a lot of other ones might do a specific card type. There's an exchange one there. And you'll notice where the red ones do it, so you've got enchant permanent. When in frenzies, few against the battlefield, or at the beginning of your upkeep, gain control of enchant permanent till end of turn. Untap that permanent, it gains haste until end of turn. So you can see we've got planeswalkers with the ability as part of a planeswalker ability. But you can see the vast majority of these cards are either blue or have blue in them. And where they're not, the only, monocolour cards, going to be red. This one's is unglued, so this one here, Dream Leash, you can only do on a tap permanent. And again, if we just look at the whole gain control thing, you can see, the broader just can gain control of any different type of thing is much wider. If you're interested in enchantments that do it, in fact, let's just be more specific. We'll do aura. Now, of course, because of the wording, there may be other enchantments that do it, but it's just worded slightly different in the Oracle text. I mean, that could, if I do that, that could be anything. Yeah, so you can see this is what I'm talking about. So these didn't come up. Slightly different wording. So you control enchanted creature. So yeah, there's something you have to really watch out for. Certain effects can get worded quite differently historically for various reasons. But yeah, it's always a bit of a tricky one. I just saw this, it made me smile. I'm trying to think of the legend in the style of that sort of artwork. Oh, there's some old stuff here. But of course, it's not always gain control, so. Or gain control type effects. I wonder if I go in here, what the tag actually says. Yeah, well, theft of a creature actually, so if we do that, yeah. Probably that's sometimes why it's better to use the O tags than try to use the O tags rather than the try and mess around with those like Oracle text searches. That's why I really use these tags a lot now. Grim Monolith. Adds multiple mana, doesn't untap self, it's a mana rock. Basalt Monolith. Similar to. I think most of these we've looked at. Untap self. Let's see historically on what timeline the ability to untap oneself. Yep, so there's Basalt Monolith here, got Mana Vault, Time Vault, Island Fish Jasonnet. I can't see that very well. Island Fist. What is it? Iron Fist. Island Fish Just Gonus. I think that is. Wow. Well, that's cool artwork. Yeah, there's Phyrexian Colossus, there's Grim Monolith. Oh, Corona of the False God, of course, yes. And we got Blasting Station and Grinding Stone. Look at all the stuff in this block here. Wow. Yeah, original Mirrodin block. Eldraine. Yeah, so hopefully by the time this video's gone out, I should have done a set musings for this. Mishra's Helix. So this is a tap X land thing. A land tapper. Similar to Floodwater Dam. Okay. Let's see how many land tappers there are. So 51. Oh, yeah, manage. Oh, I see manipulate. So this would include, yeah, cards which are able to also tap all manner of permanents. I've got mole worms. And you've got cards as well like Twitch, so any card where you can tap or untap stuff would also be included here. Mind over matter. Some of these we've seen already. Phyrexian Processor. This is really interesting. Looks like it was popular in the World Championship in 2000. Let's see what we've got here. Unprinted token. Okay, so that would mean that also these are all cards where a token hasn't been printed. Okay, that's interesting. Fun ruling. Token generator. Let's see what the fun ruling is. Cards with ruling with the rules managers having fun with us, not necessarily laugh out loud funny. Oh, that's funny. Let's look at some token generators. So what I'm curious about with that, obviously there's a lot of cards here. I need to narrow this down a bit. Firstly, let's just get a historical feel for token generation. Yep, so obviously lots of stuff. I'm sure I mentioned this in an artwork episode maybe. I think I ended up actually buying one of these just because, I mean, it's pretty high cost for a 0/1 artifact creature. But I thought it was cool because we now see this effect where you sacrifice it, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. Was it treasure tokens? And we looked at Keeper in an artwork video. There's a cycle of keepers. But what I wanted to know was, because artifacts are always interesting, I think, for token generation, because of course you can put them in as long as there's no activation cost of a specific colour. It's like a colourless activation cost, or mana of any colour. Yet it can go in any deck. So it's interesting if you're looking for a little bit of token utility in a commander deck. We'll do a commander order in a moment, because what do we ended up with? 66 cards. Starting off with the Hive, which generates a giant wasp for 5. Okay. Oh, look at all the conditions on that. I've got to read this out. Creates 1 giant wasp, a 1/1 flying creature. Represent wasps with tokens, making sure to indicate when each wasp is tapped. Wasps can't attack during the turn created. Treat wasps like artifact creatures in every way except that they are removed from the game entirely if they ever leave play. If the hive is destroyed, the wasps must still be killed individually. So just clarifying there the nature of a token, and of course you can see the errated text a lot simpler, because now everybody knows what a token is, what happens to it when it dies, those sort of things. But yeah, funny to read the rules text on these really early cards where people were seeing things like tokens, token generation for the first time, and like, how do you handle that in Magic, where the rules are printed on the cards themselves. That one generates poison counters. So if I was to do this by EDH ranking, mere battlesphere and trading post makes a lot of sense. And Hammer of Porphyros, of course. And I'm curious to know if anybody watching this, just often adds these sort of cards that feature token generators, almost like an auto include, the artifact ones, into their commander decks, just so they've always got that sort of token utility to act as jump blockers or to act as a sack outlet in their deck. Ring of Gix. Drawback, tap a tap creature, because Icy Manipulator, similar to 8 artifact, tap artifact, tap a land. And yeah, we've looked at this card numerous times before. This type of cards, I probably won't go through this in too much detail. The interesting thing is the echo here. So seeing as this is the first card from, I think, I'm trying to think last week if I saw any Echo cards or not. But anyway, let's just have a look at Echo and just see when it started, how many cards, what sort of sets it was in. Again, Soul Echo, so I have to ignore some things which name a card where they've got Echo in the title. Oh yeah, clearly as a Saga. Quite a number. Then it's in Legacy. Again. So there's Blueprint there. Come in different artwork. Oh no. This is Destiny. Yeah, and this is something that happened in this block, wasn't it? That a lot of keywords that we hadn't seen for a while suddenly cropped up. I'm sure I've said this in a previous video. It must have been completely mind-blowing if you onboarded Magic during this period in Magic's history, where we had some sets with just an obscene amount of keywords. Particularly older stuff. What's that? Oh, Arch Enemy. They must have produced one specifically for that. Modern Masters. Yeah, there's one for Commander product. So yeah, a lot of vintage stuff here. Yeah, there's our Crater Hellion, which we have seen already. I just had some other things to look at for that one, so I didn't bother looking at the Echo at that point. Yep, War Marshal. Yeah, so no surprise seeing the remastered product. What's the most recent thing? March of the Machine, the Commander product, okay. So yeah, a lot of these seem to be sets that have, not surprisingly, connections to earlier storylines, themes from earlier in Magic's history. Stroke of Genius, yeah, we looked at this last week. It was in the Academy deck. So we saw that, similar to Blue Sun Zenith, Brain Geyser, Even the Score, Transcendent Message, Ingenious Mastery, Drowning Dreams, Card Draw, and I wonder if we'll be able to do specifically stuff that either draws X. Let me just see if that's going to come up. Oh yeah, so quite a few draws X cards. I wonder if there's also draw X anywhere on a card. Yeah. Dregs of Sorrow in that context, with the most recent being Corvold from Urza Drain Commander, and then in the Drawers X version, Brain Geyser, and then Prosperity, and then Stroke of Genius. Of course, that's each player, so. Temporal Aperture. Free cast another storyline card. Play from top. Okay, play from top it is. Cards that let you play or cast the top card of your library. Separate from impulsive draw, which exiles it first. Okay. Play from top was a thing from Temporal Aperture forward. Oh, it's Gin of Wishes. So yeah, big gap. Or big gaps. So we get Urza, Onslaught, Future Sight, M10, Zendikar, Mirrodin, and a new Phyrexian. So it just keeps cropping up now and again. Drain and the Doctor Who special stuff. No, I don't want a jelly baby, thank you. Anyway, look at the top card library any time. Yeah, another interesting bit of utility which can go in any deck. Interesting. I'm trying to think of the best term for this sort of card, whether or not it has it. Yeah, prisoner. Yeah, prison. That's it. So restricts gameplay in some way. And there's Tinker. Time you play Tinker, sacrifice an artifact, search low for an artifact card and put that artifact into play. Shuffle your library afterwards. Tutor to battlefield, sack out the artifact, synergy artifact, tutor artifact. And in terms of tutoring artifact, yep, quite a number of cards that do it in a number of different scenarios. Obviously, yep, got Enlightened Tutor, but yeah, quite a number here of other ones that do it in a variety of different ways. And we have Trinket Mage. Two and a blue 2/2 comes into play. You may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 1 or less. Reveal that card and put it into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. Scars and Mirrodin. I think this might have been, wasn't there a Scars and Mirrored in intro deck, which played around with illusions and had a bit of artifact stuff in it. I'm trying to do that totally from memory, so I'm not sure. And you've got obviously Stoneforge Mystic, which specifically does equipment. Oh, actually, maybe I'm thinking of Treasure Mage. Maybe that's it, or maybe both. Trophy Mage, Tribute Mage, a lot of mages. Trove Mage. And yeah, quite a number of wizards in Magic that care about artifacts. If you were to, so if I do type wizard, that's a wizard, 52 of them. Voltaic Key, Tappity Tap, similar to Galvanic Key, how we looked at this last week. Manifold Key, Untap of Artifacts, and Synergy with Artifacts. There you go. So quite a bit of synergy, quite a bit of, well, 37 Untapper of Artifacts. So I'll go through that fairly quickly because we covered that last week. Wildfire. This looks interesting. So 4/2 red. Each player sacrifices 4 lands and Wildfire deals 4 damage to each creature. So Burning of Zyni. Symmetrical. Remove land. Removal land. Sacrifice. Sacrifice outlet for lands. How big a thing is that? 212. Removal land sacrifice 40. Okay, let's look at that. Omen of Fire. What's that targeting? Plains and some white permanents. Okay. Thresher Beast. Oh yeah. It's a bit of a green thing, isn't it? ETB is attached to a creature that causes something to be sacrificed or destroyed. No, I mean I'm thinking of a few cards in Magic where that's the case for destruction. Of course, this is sacking. So interesting one to look at. Actually, let's just try it just for creatures. There we go. So was that red and green? I suspect there is braids. That's the beginning of each upkeep. There's a Hellion there as well. I don't know how effective this is going to be, but I am curious about this. It's like there's a lot here with activated abilities. Acidic slime. Fault grinder. Worn Powerstone. Similar to Sisay's Ring. Worse than Soul Ring. So yeah, a worse Soul Ring, I suppose. Ergolon's Eye. Adds multiple mana. Mana Rock. Also Hedron Archive as well here. It's an interesting card. And I don't even know if the term I want to do name, don't I? So again, you know, when you get these cards come up like this, it's quite interesting to do a name search and see whether, you know, there's like namesake cards or cards which are named similarly and also have a similar effect. A bit like, you know, worn. Oh. Doesn't really work in that instance because it's going to be sworn, isn't it? Yeah, so not much worn stuff, but a lot of sworn stuff. Remote Isle. So cycling lands. So this was part of a cycle of cyclers. And if you're curious, let's have a look at the original artwork. Also includes in this one, Blasted Landscape, which you can see is a colourless one, but doesn't come into play tapped. You can see it's been reprinted a few times. Tap land, you did sound so. Better than Desert of the Mindful. Worse than Fetid Pools. Worse than Irrigated Farmland. So yeah, lots of these cycling lands in different contexts, similar to a Lonely Sandbar. So I suppose the best way to look at this is to simply do type land, and in the Oracle text cycling, and our old friend First Printing, put it in Ascending Order. So first started with as a Saga. Then we had some in Onslaught, and these cards, you know, will often crop up in Commander decks. They've been reprinted. Let me see if, yeah, Commander 2015 for those. That's been in a few Commander products and the Arch Enemy product. Then we have this one from Commander 2016, which was Ash Barrens. And then these cycling dual lands from Amonkhet. And then these ones from Hour of Devastation. And the Triumphs from Lair of Behemoth, Ikoria. And we've got ones from Streets of New Capenia. So these ones do, what's that, white, black, green. So that would be wedge, wouldn't it? I think. Yeah. Whereas these here would be shards. Tolarian Academy. I'm sure this is probably going to come up on several occasions going forward. We'll see. But we did look at this last week. It was a cycle of legendary lands from Urza cycle. And ramp. Synergy with artifacts, adds multiple mana. Yeah, we have had a look at this before. But let's look at cards that specifically have Tolarian in them. So it crops up in Weatherlight. Tolarian Kraken. Let's confiscate. You control enchanted permanent, which we've actually looked at already. I must have accidentally put that in a second time from the sideboard. Hibernation, return all green permanents to owner's hands. So yeah, we're on into the sideboard area. Sweeper permanent bounce. Oh, 4 of those, wow. Not a big thing. So that one does green. Does all, so upheaval does all permanents. Wash out, you get to choose, and World Purge. Okay. So it's got a number of things stapled to that. So return all permanents to the owner's hand. Each player chooses up to 7 cards in his or her hand and shuffles the rest into his or her library. Oh, what's that called when it does that? Apart from discard to library. Yeah, there's a card I'm trying to think of, but I just can't remember the name of it. Oh, Morphling. I love these sort of cards. Cards with Flowstone and capacity to gain additional abilities or evasion. So, of course, Etherling. So let's put this in context. So we've got Morphling, Torchling, Thornling, Brightling and Endling. Was that in there as a mega cycle? Yes, it was. Cool. The true cycle of Morphlings. Well, I had no idea. This is what I love about doing this. I just stumble across all this stuff. Wow, so how spread out was that? Mega cycle. Urza Saga, Plane of Chaos, Conflux, Battle Bonds, and then Modern Horizons. Oh, that's funny. How much are they? Oops. So I'll set you back. Original one, $12, 25 cents, 180, 52, 19. So yeah, the most expensive is Morphling. So there you go. There's a little mini collection. I've got my Morphling binder. So if you go back to all the Morphlings, try and find that. Yep. What sort of monies are you looking at? If you had a Morphling binder. What did I do wrong there? Okay, 12.39, 6.85, 178, 25 cents, 180, 22, 31. There you go. It's fairly affordable little collection going on there. So really, yeah, the only expensive ones, so stuff that's above, say, $2 will be the first two. Yeah, okay. Rack and Ruin. It's in the jam decks. Punny name, removal artifact, destroy, and alliteration. Lots of those. So I wonder if there's anything interesting to look at in this context. So destroy 2 artifacts. I mean, that sounds incredibly specific. Destroy 2. Do we get many magic cards where they specifically destroy 2 things? 8 cards. Another little mini collection. Things that destroy 2 things. Shivan Hellkite, Yeah, it got reprinted in 10th edition. That's where I sort of remember it from. It was in the dual decks, Knights versus Dragons, Burn Any, and a Pinger. So again, things we've looked at before. Yeah, pingers, lots of pingers in Magic. And yeah, interesting that as well this, you know, scalable pinger as well. If you've got plenty of mana to invest in here, so you can see where this might be useful in a big mana deck. But again, as I said, a lot of that mana could be coming from Tolarian Academy as opposed to necessarily red mana. And this is sideboard stuff, just to remind you. So, Evasion, Hate Red, French Vanilla. And, you know, generally, I mean, not unusual to see stuff which has flying and some sort of protection from something. Going right back. It's the most recent stuff. Lord of the Nazgul. And if we just specifically talk about creatures, because you can see here it's a mixed bag of stuff. Oops, creature. Yep, so it's screened out a few non-creatures. Because you've got things like Emrakul, Taser, more Emrakul, Baneslayer. Now that was a card. Oh, I remember when that came out. Look at all the tags. Yeah, better than Rashka, the Slayer, the legend. Yeah, it's M10. How many times did that get reprinted? 10 and 11, it's on the front of the vaults, and then, so yeah, was it 3 core sets? And then finally Meltdown, so another sideboard card. Destroy each artifact with total casting cost X or less. So yeah, scalable. Interesting. Mana value matters, okay. Similar to Vandal Blast. That's got Overload on it. Stapled to Hammer Mage. Oh, we had loads of those. Yeah. What have we got? 33 sweeper artifact destructions and 347 of those. And as you'll probably know, if we look at in terms of, well, actually we've already got those. I was just trying to think of an interesting way of looking at this. Mana value X or less. Is there an easier way to ooh. One thing I was a little curious about is, you know, across what's, so in terms of sweeper artifact destruction, the different colours of magic. just going through very quickly. So you've got stuff in white that does it, in blue, well, only because blue's in the casting cost, that one. Then we get in black, we've got corrosion, again with black it's combined up with something else. So I'd expect to see quite a bit in red, and in green, yeah, quite a bit. So red and green, and then a few other in the others. It was interesting that we get it in, oh, of course white, because you, yeah, destroy them, yeah, of course. Was it disenchant? Is that right? No, not disenchant. Anyway. Do that. Oh, Jove, it does make me laugh. Okay. Removal artifact. Oh, Timber and Fiends again. Oh dear. Oh yeah, was sorry. Disenchant does enchantments and artifacts. That's it. And shatter. Yeah, shatter in red just does artifacts. Okay. That must have been some party, that's all I can say. Okay, oh, and on the charms. Old creeping mould. So there we have it. Hopefully that was interesting. I did enjoy making this. It's interesting to see how things got mixed up a little bit in terms of, you know, card choices with Tolarian Academy in standard, or in this case, you know, it would be featuring the Urza Saga block constructed, and how that sort of combined up with some of the aspects we saw in the Academy deck from last week, plus, yeah, leveraging the ability to generate quite a bit of mana. So it's going to be interesting as we work through standard whilst we still have Academy in standard over the coming weeks. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.